So we discuss some inyane Krias Hatorah. So the Gemara tells us in Baba Kama, I believe the 7th Perek Meruba, which is a very yeshivish Masechta, and as well as the Rambam codifies it as well, about Moshe Rabbeinu instituting Krias Hatorah, Monday, Thursday, Shabbos, Yom Tov, etc. And the Gemara also talks about Ezra instituting it as well, Mincha Shabbos, because people, it's a long day, the Yoshvei Kronos, people sitting around playing games, doing nothing. He wanted to make sure they got some learning in the afternoon, so he also instituted Krias Hatorah. So again, it's not the shiur tonight, but basically the different opinions how in the Rishonim how to learn the Gemara, what exactly Moshe instituted and what did Ezra add to it. So some say Moshe instituted 3 aliyahs, but it was 1 pasuk per aliyah. And Ezra came along and said 3 psukim minimum for an aliyah. Or others say that he only had 3 psukim, and then Ezra added more. So there are nafkaminas, but it won't be tonight's share. So basically Ezra wanted to make it more worthwhile coming for. He said they're not going to come for a couple of psukim. He knew his crowd, and he said we have to give them a full share for them to come in for. They're not going to come in for 5 minutes. So either way, so it's interesting, Moshe instituted Krias Hatorah, and yet Krias Hatorah is only a din d'Rabbanan, is only a rabbinical law. The fact that Moshe Rabbeinu, we call it Torah's Moshe, and he got the Torah from God, everything he said doesn't mean didn't make it a din d'oraisa, it didn't make it a biblical law. Moshe instituted Avelis, and according to us, B'nai Ashkenaz, the 7th day of Avelis is only d'Rabbanan. So Moshe Rabbeinu was, when he was doing the Torah's Nevuah, so then, and when he was talking Shechina Medaberes B'tok Grono Shel Moshe, when he was giving it over, dictating the 5 books, so that had a din Torah, but it doesn't mean everything Moshe said had a din of a din d'oraisa, a din, the different halachas. So Moshe, both Moshe and Ezra combination, they instituted Krias Hatorah. So the Gemara tells us in Megillah that so different days you call up different amount of people. So Sheni, Chamishi, Mincha Shabbos, Monday, Thursday, Mincha Shabbos, we call up 3. Rosh Chodesh and Chol Hamoed, you call up 4. Yom Tov, you call up 5. Yom Kippur, you call up 6. Shabbos, you call up 7. And the Mishnah is not clear, but then it talks about on certain days you can have Hosafis, and certain days we have a Haftorah. Certain days of those, we'll get into what they are. But the Mishnah throws in, it's not as clear when you can have a Hosafa, when can you add to them, and when can't you, and on what days can you read a Haftorah. So Rashi writes the theme of Haftorah, and perhaps Hosafa as well, is Bittul Melacha. It means it's not an issue whether you're actually working or not. It's a question of the day, Al Pi Halacha, you permitted to work today. And so it's a day where Shabbos, the Yom Tov, are days where you don't go to work. So therefore, those are the days where we have Haftorah, and perhaps we'll just stick to Haftorah for a minute. We'll see about Hosafah soon. But you certainly have a Haftorah. And the other days are, during the week, you can't, people run, even Rosh Chodesh, in Chol Hamoed, the discussion, you're not supposed to work Chol Hamoed, but there are certain exceptions to the rule. So that already, even on Chol Hamoed, they didn't do a Haftorah because of Bittul Melacha. I'm not going to get into the discussion now about Yom HaAtzmaut, about some institute a Haftorah. I'm not sure with or without a bracha. I'm not sure what they do. You're from B'nai Akiva. So the point being is, Rav Soloveitchik was very against. He said, what kind of joke is that? Even on Chol Hamoed, which has Kedushas Yom Tov, because people go to work, you don't have a Haftorah. So how can you even consider besides all the other issues, he didn't think it was appropriate. I assume they don't make a bracha on the Haftorah. So I guess, that's, I don't know if that's basically learning. If it's no bracha, it's not really so much of an issue, meaning you're just learning Tanakh, but the fact that the institute, he had a problem with that. But either way, we'll wait for Yom HaAtzmaut to have a further discussion on it. So the point being is, it's so Shabbos and Yantiv, where we have Bitul Malacha, we read the Haftorah. That's what Rashi says. And the Ran doesn't necessarily disagree with Rashi. He's working with Bitul Malacha, but he adds to Rashi. He says, you know what? What's the order for? I understand Bitul Malacha. Okay, so Yantiv, Yom Kippur, and Shabbos should be even. All 5, all 6, all 7. Like, what's 5, 6, 7? Why does Yantiv have 5, Yom Kippur 6? So the Ran writes, it's an indication of the Kedushas Hayom. The more aliyahs of the day, that shows the holiness of the day. So Yantiv is 5. So obviously Chol Hamoed and Rosh Chodesh, we bring a carbon. It's not a regular day. It's 4. 5 is Yantiv. 6 is Yom Kippur, and 7 is Shabbos. Interesting. It's actually a machlokas in the Gemara between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael. I believe Rabbi Akiva switches it around and says 6 on Shabbos, 7 on Yom Kippur. Rabbi Yishmael says 6 on Yom Kippur, 7 on Shabbos, which is good for the machlokas. People have a discussion. What is the holiest day of the year? Is it Shabbos or is it Yom Kippur? Because it's Shabbos Shabbaton. Shabbos also might be Shabbos Shabbaton. But either way, so that's a discussion. But the bottom line is we paskin, in this case like Rabbi Yishmael, that we do 7. So if you work with the Ran's opinion is clearly Shabbos is the holiest day of the year. And it's in contrast to Western society values. Western society values of the event, the Super Bowl, the things that happen once a year. Those are the most important. But in Judaism, it's the weekly things, it's the everyday things. But Shabbos every week. The fact something Tadir v'sheino tadir tar kodem, we go for consistency. Miyale b'har Hashem, that's one level. Who could be excited at times and climb the mountain of God, but that's one level. Umi yakom b'mkom kacho, who could get the hit in the bottom of the 9th with 2 outs. That's the difference. You could be a 300 hitter, but then you're a 100 hitter in the playoffs. People, New York fans haven't forgiven Beltran for striking out in Game 7 with his bat still on his shoulder. Or if you get to the Knicks, they still haven't forgiven Starks. We could go on and on. But those people who turn it up a notch when it comes crunch time, playoff time, and others that just fall apart. So it's a consistency day in. So either way, that's the machlokas Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yishmael. And therefore, according to the Ran, Shabbos is the highest level of Kedusha. So that's why the Ran writes. So really, Me'ikar Hadin, what about having a Hosaf on Yantif? So really, Me'ikar Hadin, as we'll see, we paskin its mutter. We don't usually do it, with an exception, but because it's the Chumrah of the Ran. Because I think Tosas writes you can have Hosafas on Yantif. The Ran has a Chumrah because of what we're just saying now is you can't have a Hosafa on Chol Hamoed, because if you do, then you're making 5 aliyahs. It looks like the Kiddush is equal. If you turn Yantiv into Yom Kippur, he says by Shabbos already is the king. If it's 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, there's no difference. So therefore, according to the Ran, there's no problem. I mean, the Mishnah says you can have Hosaf on Shabbos. But the Ran says you only can have Hosaf on Shabbos because there's no problem. However, but on Yantiv he says one should not have Hosaf because you're adding to the Kedusha. So, because what does it have to do with? Because there's a discussion in the Gemara in Megillah. Well, we will get to that, but so that's what the Ran sheet is. You don't add Hosaf, it's only on Shabbos. But Yikar Adin we passed in even on Yantiv, as it's going to get into a discussion whether Maftir is Ola Leminyan Shiva. There's a discussion in the Gemara and Megillah. We know let's say you call up 7 aliyahs on Shabbos. And we know there's Maftir. So what does that mean? Is it 7 plus 1? Or is Maftir number 7? So that's a shaila in the Gemara and Megillah. Whether Maftir is Ola Leminyan Shiva or not. So they point out over there in that, so if we paskin that Maftir is Ola Leminyan Shiva, like that's the question if we do, but the bottom line, what do we do on Yom Tov? We read 5 plus Maftir, So it's mashma we're passing mafter is an olol minyan shiva, and yet we're still doing it. So it's a hosafa then. So Me'ikar Adin, it looks like we work with Tosfos that since we don't count, as we'll see, we'll have to get into on a tainis, mincha tainis, on a mincha of a tainis, when is mafter? Mafter is a shlishi. We don't have 3 plus 1. So that's what we have to reconcile when we get into it is, how come when it comes to mafter on the tainis, mafter is the third, the one who gets shlishi gets the mafter, mashma, that mafter is included in the 3. So it's olol minyan. Yet from our practice on Shabbos and Yom Tov, it seems to say the opposite. So that issue, so I'm just saying, make our din, depending how you assume by mafter, so on Yom Tov. So if you assume that mafter is not included, so the fact that we do mafter, that'll be a point of contention, but the fact that we do mafter shows that we are doing hosafa. So there are basically 2 exceptions to the rule. When so according to the Ran, according to our minhag, because our minhag is we follow the Ran. Generally, we don't make hosafas on Yom Tov. Again, but you have to know that Me'ikar Adin you can, but the minhag is not to. What's the I'll give you an exception. I'll give you a Shabbos where we don't make hosafas, and I'll give you a Yom Tov where we do. When Yom Tov shechol b'Shabbos, what do we do when Yom Tov falls out on Shabbos? The minhag is no hosafas. Again, besides mafter, we don't yet, right? We just do the 7 aliyahs. We don't make hosafas when Yom Tov falls out on Shabbos, right? And when do we do a hosafa on Yom Tov? We just had it. You're in Ohei Tzedek. It was the highlight of the year for you. Simchas Torah. We do, that's the exception to the rule. It's Yom Tov, and not only do hosafas, we take hosafas to the next level, and then some. So the question is, why are those, so Rav Selevan could explain why are these 2 exceptions to the rule, because it says it goes by, it's the nature of the Kriya, the Rav pointed out. So on Yom Tov Shel Shabbos, are we reading Parsha Shavua, or we're reading in Yani Diyoma? Yes, we're reading in Yani Diyoma. So we're really reading, even though it's Shabbos, we're reading a Yom Tov Dika Kriya. So hence we go with the minhag of not having hosafas. But what are we doing on Simchas Torah, at least now? It's a question beforehand what they did, because they only had Simchas Torah exactly once every 3 years. Because, see, people make the mistake, they think, in some non-Orthodox synagogues, the practice is, and they read, let's say, Bereshis, they read a third of Bereshis. The next week they read a third of Noach, and they go back and they have a 3-year cycle. I mean, they can do what they want, but the 3-year cycle, what the Yerushalmi is talking about is you don't go out of order, you just take 3 weeks to read Bereshis. So basically every 3rd year you had a Simchas Torah, meaning you finished the actual Torah. So we'll deal with our minhag, we have it every year. So that since we're reading a Parashat Shavua, like a Shabbos, so therefore we go with that's how the Rav explained the Lumdis, that those 2 are exceptions to what Krias Hatorah. Normally we're reading Parashat Shavua, so it goes more by the nature of the reading than it is what day it is, what was coming out. So, but the bottom line is, so on Simchas Torah we go with the minhag of Shabbos and then some, we add hosafas, and Yom Tov we don't. So that's what the Rav pointed out. So there's a discussion in terms of, as I pointed out, about being mafta olol minyan shiva or not. So the Gemara.
Are there any other exceptions to Simchas Torah?
Basically, Simchas Torah is the only Yom Tov that we have hosafas, and Shabbos. Any Yom Tov that falls out on Shabbos, we have the hosafa. So they point out. So the Gemara says, we're discussing about mafta olol minyan shiva or not. So that's a discussion in the Gemara. So the question is, so the Gemara has a discussion that what Haftorah do we read? So the Gemara says the dummy way, that basically we try to pick a Haftorah, something from the Viyam of Ksuvim that's relevant to the Parsha. That's why minhag Sfard Ashkenaz, you can have different Haftorahs because it doesn't write anywhere what Haftorah you read. In fact, Simchas Torah is a discussion what Haftorah you read. But I'm saying, so that's why so the Gemara says basically that since we have 7 aliyahs on Shabbos, and 3, you have a minimum of 3 psukim for aliyah. 7 times 3 is 21. That's why it says the Haftorah on Shabbos should be at least 21 psukim. Well, that's why if you notice, usually it happens that way. On Shabbos the Haftorahs are longer, on Yontiv they're shorter. Because Yontiv it's 5 times 3. Or Yom Kippur. So they compare based on how long the Haftorah should be. So the kasha is we have the Haftorah has to be 21 psukim. So the Gemara asks, according to the opinion that maftir isn't ola laminyan shiva, the maftir doesn't count in the 7. You do 7 plus 1, then we should read 24 psukim. In other words, why is it only 21? That makes sense if maftir is within the 7. But if maftir is 8, then why not 24? That's the Gemara's kasha. So over then, maybe you bring me a proof that we see maftir is included in the shiva. The Gemara says no raya. And we'll get into why no raya not. He says no. The Gemara says, why we don't, we don't count it as part of the 24, because the only reason the reason why we're reading maftir, why don't we just go straight into the Haftorah? When we read the Haftorah, read from the Torah first, called maftir, out covered Torah, because it's inappropriate that we don't want a person, so why don't we just go up and just start off with Nevi'im without reading from the Torah? People want to equate Navi and that Nevi'im and Ksuvim with Torah. That was my Monday night share. Unfortunately, it's not on kosher too, it's been going on here. That was the Monday night where I went into the differences between that, but I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to have another one on that topic. But they point out, it's covered Torah, where every time you read from Navi, you want to make sure you read from the Torah also to give covered Torah. So that's what the Gemara says. So you can't bring a raya. It's nothing to do with the raya ola minyan shiva. Nah, maybe it's not. But the reason why we want to read, no matter what you're going to, so it doesn't really count. What we're saying is, it doesn't really count because we're only reading it out covered Torah, not because we really need it. So therefore the Gemara, that's a discussion. That's why it's not as we approve. So Tosas asks a more simple question. Tosas says, why did the Gemara give the answer of covered Torah? Why didn't Tosas give me another answer? What answer Tosas should have given? Do you know why it doesn't count? Because what do we do? What's our practice? What do we do for maftir? We just go back and read the same 3 or 4 psukim we just read. The Tosas says, why did the Gemara have to come on to covered Torah? To say simply, of course, you're not adding any 7 times 21 because I'm going back and reading over the same psukim. So what do I need to come on to cover? That's Tosas kasha. So Tosas answers, then it must be, and he says by a couple of things, the minhag changed. Midin ha-Gemara, maftir had its own psukim. Maftir didn't do what we do today. Apparently maftir had it, whatever you did, you left out psukim, depending on your shita, whether maftir counted it to 7 but you didn't, whatever you did for maftir, you read the last 3, 4, 5 psukim. You weren't repeating anything, it was new. Tosas said that was that was the original institution. That's why the Gemara didn't give his answer to Tosas, because during his Zman Gemara they did read new psukim. And therefore the Gemara has to come on to another reason of covered Torah. That's what Tosas points out, that there were different changes, and that's why what do we do? How do we basically show our minhag that maftir isn't ola minyan shiva? We read a kaddish in between also. We do a kaddish, kaddish. During Rizman HaGemara, they did the kaddish after maftir. So he's pointing out we had different minhagim, kind of like Tosas and Brachas discusses regarding, there's a halacha of smuchas gul with tefillah. that we're supposed to connect. I think in the one we say Baruch Gal Yisrael, and then we go right into Shmon Esrei. We're supposed to be Soma Gul and Tefillah. So the question is, the Gemara asks, what about at night? We don't go. We have a lot of draining in between. We have Hashkiveno, Baruch Hashem, Yolam Amen. So the Gemara says Hashkiveno Gula Richta. It's part of the Gula. And then Baruch Hashem Yolam, they also discuss it. Some the Minik Sfard is not, the Gra didn't say it, but so they deal with that question. So Tosfos and others point out that really, strictly speaking, what we're showing is the real din is only by Shacharis. And that's why we even had a Kaddish. We put in a Kaddish to show really we're not really being so. Really, there is no din at night. It's a discussion, but really, Mirka din we see. It's the same type of concept Tosfos is saying here. The fact that you put the Kaddish in between is showing that the Mafter is not Ovo. So our today wouldn't be a Raya anymore because we do the Kaddish and we read the same Sukkim. But so the question is, Bisman HaGemara, what they did, that was a discussion in the Gemara. But that's what Tosfos points out. It's Krias Hatorah. The Gemara points out that's why you can't bring me a proof. In fact, that's the question I asked before. How regarding Mafta, is Mafta Ola Minyan Shiva or not? So some Rishonim learn, I think it's the Ran and others, that the question is, you have to reconcile while Shabbos and Yontif Mafter is separate. We do the 5 and 7 and then we do the Mafter, implying Mafter Eino Ola, and how do we deal with Tainus? So some Rishonim want to say that no, it's no, that really we paskin, the raya is that the fact that why do we have a why don't we do it on the Taina on Shabbat? Because they say like this, because we're choshes for the Chumrah of the Ran. The Ran says no Hosafis, only on Shabbos, unless it's all Yontiv and also, but only on Yontiv and Shabbos, America, then we have Hosafis. So the question is, so we can't have a Hosafa on the Tainus. There's no Bitul Malacha, you work on a Tainus. So therefore, we're taking both Chumras, that on Shabbos and Yontiv, or that since you can have Hosafis, so we want to cover both Shittas, so therefore, we have the Hosafis, so therefore, if we have the Hosafis, we might as well read this, we'll cover ourselves, we'll read the Shiva, then we'll do the Maftir, so therefore, I don't know how you cover both Shittas, but at least you're covering it, you're reading the Shiva, plus you're doing I guess according to the Shita, you need 8 Aliyahs, so therefore 7 plus 1, so therefore you're covering all your angles, so to speak. But when it comes to Tainus, you can't cover your angles, you have to make a stand, because you can't have a Hosafa, so therefore on Tainus, therefore, since you can't have a Hosafa, that's why we're Ola Laminyan Shlishi. That's what Rabbeinu Tam sheet is that we see. Really, it is Ola Laminyan Shiva, but since we can have Hosafas on Shabbos, so therefore we go with Chumrah. That's the Pshat of Rabbeinu Tam. So the question is, but what about the other? What about another way of learning? Why don't we have a Hosafa on Yom Tainus? So Rav Salvation explained anyway. I mean, there's a Tosfos quotes from a Rabbeinu Meshulam anyway in terms of what one has to do. That he points out there's a discussion in the Gemara Megillah about how many if it's a Yom Tainus on a Sheni v'Chamishi, so of course you have the 3 Aliyahs, the 10 Psukim, but there's a opinion in the Gemara that says on a Yom Tainus on today, you only have to read like 1 Aliyah or something, or 1 Pasuk, something much less. So we don't pass in that way. But the Rav said, what's the svara? Like what's the real? So really, like along what we're saying, really, he holds on a Yom Tainus, you don't really have to read from the Torah. What's the Yom Tainus all about? Why do we read a Haftorah at Mincha v'Tainus? Because Tainus is a day of Musar and Tocha and rebuke. And the Nevi'im were good at that, giving us a proper... So that's what we want to read. Really, the purpose of reading, we want to learn different Nevi'im. We want to learn the Musar and the rebuke. But again, as I pointed out, the Gemara, Krias Hatorah, we never read only a Haftorah. Anytime you read a Haftorah, you have to read from the Torah first. So he's saying if the only reason you're not reading from the Torah, but Torah is Krias Hatorah, you're reading out Krias Hatorah, so therefore one aliyah is enough. As long as the person, and that's that shita, but that's what he's pointing out. That the reason why, so therefore it wouldn't be like the first, it's not because we're saying that it has to be Ola Minyan. The reason is you don't really need those, you don't have to read all those aliyahs anyway. But the point being, we see the same concept of Krias Hatorah in terms of that. So that's what they point out, this issue of Mafta Ola Minyan Shiva. I think we'll summarize here, and then we'll move into Parsha. So let's just summarize, and we'll continue more on Sunday or the other times, because right now that's what I'm focusing on, Krias Hatorah. So let's just summarize. So we pointed out that Moshe, Ezra, they instituted Krias Hatorah. Moshe started it, Ezra added to it, and the Mishnah Megillah goes through the different days, how much we have to lane, 4, 5, 6, 7. Rashi says Bitul Malacha is the criteria for Haftorahs and Hosafis, and the Rani has, it's an indication of Kedushas Hayom. That's what the number indicates. So they point out, and then we pointed out the exceptions to the rule, Simchas Torah, or Yontif Shechol B'Shabbos, because of, it goes by, as Rav Salvation pointed out, it goes by the nature of the Krias Hatorah. It goes by, with the Parsha Shavua. And then we discussed the issue of Mafta Ola Minyan Shiva. 7 times we need 21 psukim. Why not 24? We said it's Krias Hatorah. And the Torah says, what do you mean Krias Hatorah? Just say simply it's the same pasuk, so it's a different institution today. We read it. We don't read it, we read new psukim. And therefore, and that's why we do a Kaddish in between to show that there's not really Ola Minyan Shiva or not. And then we pointed out the same concept here. You have to explain why there's a Hosaf on Shabbos and not on Yontif, according to one shita, that because really in a Tainus maybe perhaps you only need one aliyah, because you're only not reading it B'Torah's Kriya, you're reading it B'Torah's, Krias Hatorah. Just to conclude, that could be also, there's a discussion when people have a yortzeit, bo bayom. So it's a whole big, yortzeit's a very, emotional thing in many ways, but in terms of people getting their aliyah, the mafter, etc. And it is a minute, the Ramah brings down, the minute, it's a good minute to do, but there's a big, so what do you do? If it's bo bayom, meaning if the yortzeit's on that day, is it better to get an aliyah, or is it better to do the mafter? So that's a discussion, because what's the issue? What I'm saying the issue is because the shayla is whether, so some say it's better to get an aliyah. Why? Because the issue is whether mafter is Ola Minyan Shiva. If mafter is Ola Minyan Shiva, then everyone should agree mafter is fine. Those who say you shouldn't get mafter and get aliyah because they hold mafter and then they want to bring a raya, that, so it could be it's no raya, it depends how you learn. We're going with the chumrah of the ran that we're adding, but that's what the issue probably is dependent on, whether you get mafter or whether you take an aliyah, different minhagim, but that's what the issue, potentially is, revolves around that issue, this issue.